Yeah.
Exactly right.
So when I moved to LA, like I fucking hated it. But I could go to Hard Times.
Yeah.
And that was to me like there was two places that were
So those were like
Mecca
comedy
in
club?
LA.
Okay.
No. Comedy Store was
Okay.
the Mecca for
Right.
stand-up, but Hard Times was the Mecca for pool.
Really?
Oh yeah, that's where Keith McCready came from.
Oh, yeah.
Hard
Okay,
Times
all right.
was this place in Bellflower, and
Okay.
you would go down there, and I would compete in the Sunday tournament. I mean, I never it came close to winning it, but I would get in it all the time and get
Right.
my nut shot in. But you could play Rodolfo Luat, you
Yeah,
could
yeah.
play Efren Reyes,
Really?
you could
Wow.
play Max Eberle,
How
you
cool.
could play John Mora, you could play just stone cold killers
Yeah, yeah.
in an open tournament.
Wow.
You could play Efren Reyes.
Wow.
Like it's just a
Wow.
random draw.
Yeah.
So you go in there, and there's a field of I don't know how many players before it fills up. It fills up every weekend.
Right.
And we would go there on Sunday. You get there early. I played Oscar Dominguez, or I played his dad Ernesto Dominguez.
Okay.
Like a killer.
Wow.
This is like killer. Mauro Paez. These guys were killers. And you would go there and watch literally the best pool in the world.
Wow.
All in Bellflower, California. And there was a lot of gambling matches.
Yeah,
You could
yeah.
sweat.
Sure.
It was awesome. I loved that place.
Yeah.
So that was like one of the things that saved me.
Okay.
That and going to there's a few other places that I went. House of Billiards in Sherman Oaks is a great place.
Okay,
We used to
okay.
play pool there. Hollywood Billiards.
Okay.
In Hollywood,
I played
is a
there.
good spot.
Yeah. Mhm.
Unfortunately, that went under.
Yeah.
So like that kept me going.
Right.
when I
Were you
came
still
down.
doing MMA then?
Well, I was doing martial arts. Yeah, I was
Okay.
doing jiu-jitsu.
Oh, that's
then.
right. Martial arts.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah, that was when I really got into jiu-jitsu. I got into jiu-jitsu in like '96.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I was actually at the same gym that Vitor Belfort when he was making his debut in the UFC. I was training at his gym.
Okay.
Because it was Carlson Gracie's academy, which was in Hollywood, and I was learning from his coaches. It was crazy, like to watch Vitor. Before
Now, how did you connect with UFC and Dana White?
Back then, so when Vitor was making his debut,
Right.
Campbell McLaren,
So this was like late 90s?
97.
97, okay.
So Campbell McLaren, who was one of the producers of the UFC,
Okay.
it was a good friend of my manager.
Okay.
And they were just having a conversation, and
Wow.
he said, "Hey, he was, randomly talking to him about how I got to hire a new guy to do interviews. We need someone to do interviews." And my manager said, "Joe is obsessed. Like he watches them all. Like he's really obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Maybe he would do it." And so they get us on the phone. I'm like, "Fuck yeah, I'll do it." And like, you got to take a propeller plane to like, Dothan, Alabama. I'm like, "I'm in. Let's go." And so
How cool.
next thing you know, I'm on these fucking puddle jumper planes
Yeah.
flying to all these weird because it was totally illegal.
And this was
in
like,
most
yeah,
states.
this was like
97.
Yeah, they had that like those. I think Dana bought it from the guys that did the
Bob
tough man,
Meyerowitz.
the whole thing in the bar
Yeah.
where they beat the crap out of each
Well,
other in the parking lot.
this was before Dana owned it. This is
Oh.
Bob Meyerowitz.
Oh,
I
really?
I
Oh,
worked for
wow.
SEG, which was the original company.
So this was
I
long
worked
before
for
the
them.
Fertitta brothers came
Yes,
along with Dana and all
long
that.
before.
Okay,
That's how
wow.
I got back into it. I quit. I did it for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. I did backstage interviews, and then there was an event in Japan. I'm like, I'm not going to Japan. I don't have any time. It was
Yeah.
it was literally costing me money.
Okay.
Like I loved doing it,
Right.
but I could make more money doing a comedy club at
Yeah.
the weekend
Right.
than I could going.
They weren't making any money, so how are they going to pay you any money, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There was no money to be
Right,
made.
right.
There was no
Okay.
money for the fighters. I mean, it wasn't I wasn't getting screwed. It was
Yeah.
just that's all it was. Like
Right.
we would go to these like half-filled high school auditoriums. Like
Right.
there was no one.
Because a lot of states were banning it and stuff like that back
100%.
then.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
very hard to get sanctioned.
Right.
That's why we had to go to like Dothan, Alabama. We had to
Right.
go, it's like, It got banned in New York, actually. My first event was supposed to be in New York, but they banned it in New York right before they did the event, and they moved the event very quickly, like overnight,
Okay.
to Dothan, Alabama.
Were the boxing promoters trying to shut it down?
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
100%.
All
And
right.
there was also like, there's so much shenanigans that goes
Yeah.
on. There's unions. There's,
Right.
there's.
If you're not
everybody's
paying them,
angry.
they're not going to
100%.
let you play.
That's
Yeah.
how the UFC stayed out of New York State forever.
Okay.
The UFC just got in New York legally. God, how many years ago was it? It wasn't that long ago.
Wow.
Like crazy
Really?
recent. Yeah, crazy recent. It doesn't make any sense. It was in every other state it was legal.
2015, 16, wasn't that?
Somewhere around then, right?
Wow.
Let's see what the actual...
I mean, I never thought about the politics of it till we were just chatting, but I'm like,
Well, back then it was like it was scary. Like what is this? No
Yeah.
one knew what it was. You didn't have all these years and years of guys like Hoist Gracie
Right.
and George St. Pierre and Kamaru Usman. We didn't have
Yeah.
anything to draw from. 2016, which is so crazy. New York, the last state to approve it. New York.
That's crazy.
Because they're dirty.
Politics.
The guy who was holding it back,
Yeah.
I believe he got arrested for corruption. See if that's true.
Wow.
There was a senator that he got busted for some shenanigans, but he was part of the problem, holding
Right.
it back.
Right.
But in the beginning, I could see why they would hold it back. Like, you're watching these guys headbutt each other.
Right.
They could
Well, I
kick
remember
in
just
the
seeing
nuts.
all the blood and everything, and
Crazy.
remember they used to do the foot stomping and all that. I mean,
Well, foot stomping's still legal.
they can do that? Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
But what you would see back then was like nut shots. You were allowed to punch people in the nuts.
Wow, brutal. I mean, straight up street fight.
There's a fight with Keith Hackney and Joe Son, and Keith Hackney is on top of Joe Son, and Joe Son's like cranking on his neck, and Keith Hackney's just punching him in the nuts.
He
Just
ain't wearing a cup. Oh my
He's wearing a
God.
cup. He's
Oh,
wearing
he
a
is?
cup. Yeah, but even so, like,
Facilities.
whatever.
Yeah, right.
You're still getting punched in the nuts.
Yeah,
Even if
right.
you have a cup on, it hurts like hell.
Yeah, yeah.
So like back in those days, I kind of understand why someone who didn't understand what was going on would think this should be illegal.
Yeah.
I totally get it.
Right.
And it was like they had to develop rules. So they developed weight classes, and then they developed rules. But I was kind of already on the way out by then. And so in 98-ish, 99, I quit.
Okay.
And then the UFC got purchased by Zuffa.
Okay.
And that was in like 2001. And I went to one of their first events.
Okay.
Vladimir Matyushenko fought Tito Ortiz, and it was right after September 11th.
Okay.
And Tito Ortiz, they used to have these elaborate walk-ins with like lights and fire and
Yeah.
shit. And Tito Ortiz is walking into the octagon with an American flag. And the place goes wild.
Wow.
Just wild.
That's cool.
Because it was like right after
Yeah.
September 11th.
Sure.
It was like, holy shit.
People needed a break from all of that
Yeah.
serious stuff.
And during that fight, the pay-per-view went out. And like the people didn't get to see
Oh,
the
no.
last rounds of the main event.
Oh,
It was a
no.
huge disaster. The UFC had to give back who knows how much money because it was
Right.
like their big event in Vegas, and the pay-per-view fucked up.
So Dana bought it yet at this point?
It was the Zuffa, which was the Fertitta brothers and Dana.
Okay,
They're the
okay.
organization that
I
bought
see.
it. So
Okay.
the Fertitta brothers bought it,
Right.
and then Dana was running it, and this was the very early stages. And this was, there was no TV to speak of that was showing the UFC.
Right.
They had to get this deal on Spike TV to put it on television.
Right.
That was like years in. So this
Sure.
is like 2005.
Okay.
So we're like 4 years later. These guys are hemorrhaging money trying to make this thing happen.
Yeah.
And when that was going on, nobody took it seriously. Like everybody thought it was just like
Isn't that when they came up with the idea of Ultimate Fighter? Is that kind of maybe what
that's
turned
exactly
the corner
what
for
it
them?
is. They paid for everything. They
Yeah.
paid to put the show on. I think they even bought out the ads. And they took care of the whole thing. They put it on television. It was like a Hail Mary, and it was
Yeah.
a fucking touchdown.
Wow.